Think about the last time you bought something. A cup of coffee, a tank of gas, a week's worth of groceries. As the transaction finished, a small, flimsy piece of paper was likely offered to you. You probably took it without a second thought, your fingers brushing against its uniquely smooth, almost dusty surface. Maybe you folded it neatly and tucked it into your wallet, or perhaps you crumpled it into a ball in the bottom of a bag. It's an act performed billions of times a day across the globia, fleeting, unconscious ritual of modern commerce. But have you ever paused to truly consider that little slip of paper? Have you ever wondered how those crisp black letters and numbers appear on its surface, often still warm from the machine, seemingly without a single drop of ink? The answer isn't a marvel of traditional printing, it's a marvel of chemistry. And hidden within that chemical reaction is a secretome that follows you home, lingers on your fingertips, and silently finds its way into your body. That ubiquitous disposable receipt is a primary carrier of a class of industrial chemicals, most famously Bisphenol A, BPA, and its equally problematic cousins. This isn't a chemical that's safely locked away within the paper's fibers. It exists as a free, unstable coating, ready to leap onto your skin at the slightest touch. So, how did this toxic secret end up on nearly every receipt we handle, and what does its invisible journey into our bodies truly mean for our long-term health? The magic behind that inkless printing is a technology called thermal paper. Unlike conventional paper, which requires a ribbon or cartridge to transfer ink onto its surface, thermal paper comes preloaded with its own invisible ink system. The surface is coated with a special chemical mixture, a dry, powdery film containing at least two key components, a leukodye, which is colorless in its natural state, and a chemical developer. When the thermal print head in the cash register or credit card machine applies precise heat to the paper, this heat triggers a reaction between the dye and the developer, causing the dye to change color typically to black inform the letters and numbers of your transaction. It's a fast, quiet, and efficient system, which explains its widespread adoption. For decades, the developer of choice for this reaction has been Bisphenol A, or BPA. Its specific chemical structure makes it incredibly effective at triggering that color change at the right temperature. Herein lies the critical distinction that turns a technological convenience into a health concern. When BPA is used in products like hard polycarbonate plastic bottles or the linings of food cans, it is chemically bonded into a stable, repeating chain called a polymer. While some leaching can still occur, the chemical is largely locked in place. On a thermal receipt, however, the BPA is not locked into any such structure. It exists in its free form, a micro-encapsulated but ultimately loose powder mixed with the dye, simply coated onto the paper's surface. Think of it less as a part of the paper and more as a fine layer of chemical dust painted on top, waiting for the slightest disturbance to be set free. This unstable, powdery nature of BPA on receipts is what facilitates the next stage of its journey, the invisible transfer. The moment your fingers grasp that piece of paper, the friction and the natural oils and moisture on your skin immediately begin to lift the chemical coating off the surface. Studies have shown that a significant amount of BPA can be transferred to your fingertips within just 5 to 10 seconds of holding a receipt. The chemical is lipophilic, meaning it's attracted to fats and oils, so it readily clings to the natural oils on your skin. From there, it doesn't just sit on the surface. It begins a process of absorption, passing through the outer layers of the epidermis. Worse yet, several common factors can dramatically accelerate this transfer and absorption. Handling a receipt with wet or greasy hands, say, after applying lotion or right after eating a pastry, increases the rate of transfer. But the most alarming catalyst is one many of us use precisely for the sake of hygiene: alcohol-based hand sanitizer. The alcohol and other penetration-enhancing chemicals in sanitizers work by temporarily breaking down the skin's protective barrier to kill germs. If you use sanitizer and then touch a receipt, or touch a receipt and then use sanitizer, you are essentially opening a superhighway for BPA to enter your body. Research has demonstrated that this sequence can increase the skin's absorption of BPA by a factor of 100. It is a cruel irony that the very product used to clean our hands can make them profoundly more vulnerable to this particular chemical contamination, moving the BPA from your skin into your bloodstream with astonishing efficiency. Once inside the bloodstream, BPA begins to reveal its most insidious quality. It is what scientists call an endocrine disruptor. Your endocrine system is the body's intricate and exquisitely balanced network of glands that produce hormones, chemical messengers like estrogen, testosterone, and insulin. These hormones regulate nearly every vital function, from metabolism and growth to reproduction and mood. Think of it as a magnificent symphony orchestra, where each hormone is a musician playing a precise part to create the beautiful music of a healthy body. An endocrine disruptor like BPA is a chemical imposter. Its molecular structure is so similar to the body's natural estrogen that it can fit into the estrogen receptors on our cells, like a poorly made key jamming into a sensitive lock. When this happens, it can trigger responses at the wrong time, block natural hormones from doing their job, or upset the entire production and balance of the hormonal symphony. It's the chemical equivalent of a rogue musician who starts playing the wrong notes at the wrong volume, throwing the entire orchestra into chaos. This disruption is why long-term, chronic exposure to BPA has been scientifically linked to a deeply troubling list of potential health problems, including infertility and reproductive issues like polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, developmental problems in fetuses and children, an increased risk for certain hormone-driven cancers like breast and prostate cancer, and metabolic disorders such as obesity and type 2 diabetes. This isn't a niche problem affecting only a handful of people. The scale of exposure is staggering. Large-scale biomonitoring surveys, such as those conducted by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, have consistently found BPA in the urine of over 90% of the population. While sources like food can linings and plastic containers are well-known contributors, the silent, constant stream of thermal paper receipts represents a significant and often underestimated route of direct, dermal exposure for the general public, and especially for cashiers who handle them all day long. In response to growing public awareness and consumer pressure, many retailers and paper manufacturers have made a highly publicized switch to BPA-free receipts. On the surface, this sounds like a victory for public health, but dig a little deeper, and you uncover a pervasive and cynical industry practice known as regrettable substitution. Instead of re-engineering the thermal printing process to use fundamentally safer chemistry, many manufacturers simply swapped out BPA for a nearly identical chemical cousin, Bisphenol S, or BPS. They can legally and truthfully label their paper BPA-free, leading consumers to believe they are holding something safe. The tragedy is that BPS is proving to be just as much of an endocrine disruptor as the chemical it replaced. Emerging scientific research is painting a grimly familiar picture. BPS also mimics estrogen, interferes with hormonal function, and is linked to the same kinds of metabolic and reproductive health issues. Some studies even suggest that BPS may be absorbed more readily through the skin and may be more persistent, meaning it takes longer for the body to break it down and eliminate it. In our quest to avoid one poison, we were unwittingly handed another, wrapped in the comforting disguise of a BPA-free label. The secret hiding in the receipt didn't disappear, it just changed its name. So we find ourselves in a world where a simple, everyday object is a vessel for a chemical deception. The story of the thermal paper receipt is a perfect microcosm of a larger challenge in our modern lives. It starts with a seemingly harmless convenience, reveals a hidden scientific mechanism with real health implications, and exposes how surface-level solutions can often mask a continuing problem. We've journeyed from an unconscious daily ritual to the cellular level of our endocrine system, uncovering a persistent toxic threat that shapeshifts just when we think we have it cornered. But to be aware of this problem is not to be powerless against it. Knowledge transforms helplessness into agency. While we cannot single-handedly reform the global chemical industry overnight, we can change the nature of our own daily encounters. The solutions are simple and conscious. You can politely refuse a receipt when you don't need one for an expense report or a return. You can opt for an emailed or text-messaged receipt, a choice offered by a growing number of businesses. You can make it a rule never to let children, whose developing bodies are far more vulnerable to endocrine disruptors, play with receipts as makeshift toys. You can make a habit of washing your hands after handling them, especially before preparing or eating food. Ultimately, the secret of the receipt is not just about BPA or BPS. It's a powerful reminder that our environment is saturated with invisible chemistry, and that true safety comes not from blind trust in labels, but from curiosity, awareness, and deliberate action. It urges us to look closer at the mundane objects we touch, the air we breathe, and the products we consume. Question what lies beneath the surface. Each time you decline a paper receipt, you are not just avoiding a chemical, you are casting a small but meaningful vote for a healthier, more transparent world.